The house was quiet in a way that made the walls feel heavier than usual. I sat alone in the living room, the same room where laughter once echoed, where birthdays were celebrated and tears were wiped away with love. At 68, I had learned the sound of silence well, but tonight, it felt different. It felt final. My hands rested on my lap, thin now, marked by years of work. I looked around at the framed photographs lining the wall. My son as a little boy with missing teeth, his high school graduation, his wedding day. This house had seen everything, every sacrifice, every prayer. I built this home brick by brick, not with my hands, but with my life. Double shifts, missed vacations, sleepless nights. Also, my son would never have to wonder where he belonged. When I bought this place decades ago, I remember standing right where I sat now, keys shaking in my hand, telling myself, this is forever. Footsteps broke the silence. My son stood in the doorway, 40 years old now, taller than me, broader shoulders, but his eyes still looked away, like a child caught between right and wrong. He wanted to say something. I could see it, but he didn't. Behind him in the kitchen stood my daughter-in-law, 38, arms crossed, watching, measuring. There was no warmth in her eyes tonight, just calculation. I swallowed hard. This house, I began, my voice soft, almost afraid. This house is in my name. No one answered. My mind drifted back years ago when I signed the papers with a smile so wide it hurt my cheeks. I remembered walking through empty rooms, imagining a future full of noise and love. I remembered telling myself that no matter what happened in the world, my family would always have a place here. I looked back at them now and felt something shift inside me, a crack I couldn't ignore. My fingers brushed against the doorframe as I slowly stood up, as if the house itself might hold me if I touched it long enough. The walls felt colder than they used to. Something was coming. I could feel it in my bones. And for the first time since I bought this house, I was afraid that forever had an ending. The television flickered softly in the corner of the room, the volume low but impossible to ignore. Bright colors, smiling faces, numbers scrolling across the screen like they didn't carry the weight of real lives. I hadn't been watching until I heard the words, $100 million. My daughter-in-law's phone buzzed at the same time. She froze. For a moment, no one moved. The air felt tight, like it was holding its breath. Then she looked down at the screen and her face changed. Shock first, then disbelief, and finally, something darker, something hungry. Her hand trembled as she read. She read it again and again. What is it? My son asked quietly, stepping closer. She didn't answer him. She walked past both of us and sat at the table, staring at the phone as if it might disappear if she blinked. Then a laugh slipped out of her mouth, sharp and breathless. I won, she whispered. The room went silent. She turned the phone toward us. The headline was impossible to miss, $100. Million lottery winner confirmed. Her name sat there in bold letters, shining brighter than anything else in the room. My son stared at the screen, his mouth slightly open. 100 million? He asked, like saying it out loud might make it less real. She nodded slowly, eyes never leaving the phone. After taxes, it's still more than we'll ever need. I felt my chest tighten. I should have been happy for her. Any family would be. But something in the way she sat, so still, so certain, made unease crawl up my spine. The news anchor's voice filled the room now, talking about luxury homes, sudden wealth, fresh starts, fresh starts. The words echoed in my head like a warning bell. My daughter-in-law finally looked up at me, not with joy, not with gratitude, but with a quiet, measuring stare, as if she were seeing me differently now, as if numbers had just rearranged the balance of power. My son smiled, nervous and unsure. This changes everything, he said. Yes, she replied softly. It does. That night, I lay awake in my room, listening to the house settle, to footsteps moving where they never used to before. Doors opening, doors closing, whispers behind walls. Money hadn't arrived yet, but something else had. Control. And in that moment, staring up at the ceiling of the home I built, I realized something painful and true. The lottery didn't just make her rich. It made her brave enough to become someone else. The house no longer felt like mine. It started with small things. Furniture moved without a word. Locks changed for security. Rooms I once walked into freely now felt off limits, like I needed permission in a place I had owned for decades. That morning, I stood in the kitchen, watching my daughter-in-law speak to someone on the phone. Her voice was confident now, sharp, controlled. She talked about lawyers, investments, new properties. Words that didn't belong in this house yet echoed through every corner of it. When she hung up, she turned to me. "We need to talk," she said. My son sat at the table, eyes fixed on his hands, 40 years old and suddenly very small. She didn't invite me to sit. She stayed standing, arms crossed, power resting comfortably on her shoulders. "This house," she began, "doesn't fit our future plans." I felt my stomach drop. "My future plans were built in this house," I replied quietly. She sighed, as if I were an inconvenience she'd finally decided to address. "We're moving in a different direction now, bigger, better." I looked at my son. "Say something." He swallowed hard. "Mom, things are changing." That was all he offered. No defense, no memory of the nights I worked late or the years. I carried this family when no one else could. My daughter-in-law stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Let's be honest. You don't need all this space. And with our money now, we can afford to reorganize." Reorganize. The word burned. "This is my house," I said, standing straighter than my aching knees wanted me to. "My name is on the deed." She smiled. Not warm, not kind, calculated. "Names can be challenged," she replied. "And money makes things move very fast." The room felt smaller. The walls leaned in. I realized then that the lottery hadn't just changed her lifestyle, it had given her confidence to erase me. My son finally looked up. Our eyes met. I searched his face for the boy I raised. For loyalty, for love. I found fear. That's when I knew the balance had shifted. Not because of strength, but because of silence. I walked out of the kitchen without another word, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. Behind me, their voices resumed, planning, discussing, deciding. And for the first time in my life, I understood something cruel and simple. Money didn't buy them happiness, it bought them permission. It happened on a night when the air felt heavier than my suitcase. The porch light glowed behind me, casting long shadows across the driveway I had shoveled, swept, and walked 1,000 times. In my hand was a small bag, clothes folded carefully, memories left behind because they didn't fit. My daughter-in-law stood in the doorway, calm, composed, final. "This is for the best," she said, her voice smooth, rehearsed. "You'll understand one day." I looked past her, into the house that no longer felt like home. My son stood near the stairs, his face pale, his mouth opening as if to speak, then closing again. Silence had become his choice. "I just need time," I said softly. "This is my house." She shook her head. "Not anymore." The words landed harder than any shout ever could. I stepped outside, the door closing behind me with a quiet click that echoed louder than thunder. The lock turned, final, absolute. I stood there for a moment listening, waiting for footsteps, for regret, for love. Nothing came. The night wrapped around me as I walked down the driveway, each step pulling me farther away from the life I had built. The house behind me glowed warm and bright, filled with light that no longer belonged to me. At the curb I stopped. My hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the truth settling in my chest. I had given them everything, a roof, stability, a future. And when money arrived, gratitude left. I didn't cry right away. Tears came later, when I was alone, when there was no one left to pretend for. I wiped my face and lifted my head. 68 years old, homeless, but not broken. As I walked into the darkness, one thought stayed with me, steady and clear. They took my house, but they couldn't take the woman who built it. And somewhere beyond the pain, beyond the betrayal, I promised myself this. This was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs.